to Our Point of View Up Close and Personal. We are so glad you all can be with us tonight. So let me introduce my host. I have with me tonight, Captain Eric Jackson. Hey, Cap, what's up?
How are you doing this wonderful Thursday?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad you could join me tonight because
Oh,
usually I
yeah.
do the up close and personal stuff,
Yes,
but I'm glad you were able to join. Yeah.
absolutely.
And we're going to have a great
Absolutely.
night because we're going to speak to an amazing author and an amazing chief. Thank you. So why don't you introduce our special guest?
Let me tell you something. There's a whole laundry list of stuff I could say, but just to keep it plain, this young lady that we are about to talk to this evening is absolutely amazing. I've had the awesome pleasure of having known her for a number of years. And I guess I must be in good graces because when I was with the fire department, for her to allow for me to come and talk to her men and women regarding public information and public affairs, chiefs just don't let anybody come talking to their folk. So you
Right.
have to have be in some sort of good grace with someone. But this amazing young lady I admire her. She's certainly a mentor. She's a new author. And I'm just going to get to it. This is the incomparable, amazing, and lovely retired police chief of Marta Police Department, Mrs. Wanda Dunham. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. If I'd have known I was going to get that type of welcome, I would have been on every week. Uh, I'll come back next week for those type of accolades. But thank you so much for having me. It is my pleasure to be here. So excited. And as Captain Jackson said, he has been such a staple in the PIO community and the fire service in DeKalb County. And so I'm just honored to have that introduction from him. Thank
you. You are certainly deserving of that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I know Jacqueline and myself are so excited to have you here on the show. We're just going to dive right into it. And we
Great.
don't want you to leave anything out. So please share with us and share with our audience. Tell us a little bit about Wanda Dunham.
Well, great. Well, for this audience and this audience only, I'm going to share everything. I'm not leaving anything out because you guys are special. So I'm going to just spill all my tea with you guys tonight. So,
Awesome.
But I am a native Atlantean, and like people from Atlanta say, I'm a Grady baby. And so that means a lot to Atlanteans, but I was born and raised in Atlanta, and I'm just excited about being from Atlanta. It's such a great city. We were raised in a little town outside of Atlanta, in Scottsdale, Georgia. And Scottsdale was a little small town. It's right on the edge of the used to be affluent Avondale Estates. And so I grew up at a time where we had segregated schools. And so I started out in all, Black schools. And then we integrated into Forest Hills, which was a white school. And so first year I went to Robert Shaw Elementary School, and then we went to Forest Hills. And so I know what segregation is like. I grew up in the deep South, in the segregated South. And so I understand that. Growing up, we had a really good family life. I had mother, father, four sisters, and we all grew up in a little 2-room house, And so I know people think, oh my goodness, she's a chief and she's done all of these things, but I had humble beginnings, but it was like what everybody had at that time. And so from going from humble beginnings to where I am today, it's nothing but for the grace of God. And so I'm humble. I know where I came from, and I know how who got me there. But so just a little bit about myself. I grew up went to college and started off in college. Well, I had to tell you about college, but I went to college and then I became a police officer, and then of course worked my way up to the chief. Now there was a lot of things that happened between
Hmm.
between that and where from where I started and where I ended. And so we can go into that. But I just want to make sure that I answer your questions. But there's a lot of things that went into where I am, and God has brought me so far that, and I didn't even know I was prepared. He was preparing me for the position that I ended up having.
So tell
Wow.
us, how was it being a Black female in law enforcement back then? Because it was, being a female, period, was kind of hard. So being a Black female at that, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah. So being in a male dominated environment, right, is tough. And so the police officers in the past, when the average police officer was about 35 years of age, white males, ex-military. I was none of those. So that tells you right there that was not me. So I was not the normal person that they were looking for. I did not do military. I had only college. I was not a average white male, and so it was difficult to find to infiltrate that clique, if you will, because it was a really hard wall of protectiveness around that field, and it was certain fields that they just didn't accept women. We got the normal. I got the normal. Why don't you stay at home and have babies? My boyfriend at the time actually told me that when I had applied for the police academy, and he told me why couldn't I have a regular job like regular people, like being a secretary or a nurse.
Wow.
And I said
He
he
was
was he
supporting you. Wow.
he became my ex-boyfriend pretty quickly after I graduated. I know somebody said, well, why did you drop him right there? And I said, I was too busy and too focused on the police academy to even worry about him, because
Hmm.
I knew that I needed to pass the police academy. And
Right.
so the police academy is so different for people, because while it's a college based type of setting, in the academics, I knew that I wouldn't have any problem because I had just graduated from college. However, going to the police academy is a lot different. It's
Hmm.
it's physical, it's driving, it's shooting. I did not grow up with a weapon in my hand, so
Hmm.
I wasn't I wasn't going deer hunting, and that no, that wasn't a part of our DNA. That wasn't what
Right.
we did on the weekends, right? We didn't go
Right.
camping in the woods because we didn't know what we would find in the woods. So we were very careful about not going in the woods,
Hmm.
shooting things, and especially having a gun. So that was a challenge for me, and so I knew that was going to be a challenge. And so you understand your weaknesses, and then you figure out how do you make yourself better. And so if that took me a little extra time on the range, if that took me practicing in when I got home at night, that's what I had to do, because I knew I had to pass this police academy,
Hmm.
because they had told me that if you don't pass the police academy, you don't have a job.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that was really interesting, and that was one of those things where it was motivation, because I knew I had just moved out from my parents' house, and I had been out for about 6 months. I had a new car, and not having a job was not an option. So you
Uh,
do what you do what you have to do, and that's what we always do.
so did you have any support or any help from the people who were in the academy, like some of your instructors and all? Were they helping you, or because I know back then that would not have been around the time for affirmative action as well.
Yeah, so we had some help but when I walked the first day I walked into the police academy, I saw about four females in my class
Hmm.
out of the 34. And I thought, oh my goodness. And then there was another class going on at the same time. And so I looked at that class, and they had a few more. They had about six females. So out of two classes of about 30, 35 people, there were 10 females. And so we were, so remember we kind of gravitate to one another. And so we had, support from other females, was very, they were very helpful. And then I had this one gentleman that from the other class that, was really helpful. And I didn't know actually who this gentleman was, but I know he was extremely helpful. And turns out that he liked me. I didn't know that. Everybody in the class knew it except me. And he was kind of hanging around, just like one of those people that just hang around. And he would call me on Sundays and say, we got it, you got this and all of this. And so I was, it was great because I was laser focused and I was thinking, this guy's really helpful. Well, it turned out to be my husband. Yeah, a year later, he became my husband, and we've been married for 32 years. So I think it stuck. So he was very, very supportive. I didn't know that he was stalking me at the time, but he did a really good job. And so that he really did help me. He was like, getting ready for the range and just, preparing me for what was to come. His class was 2 weeks ahead. So that helped, having him like prepare me for what was to come. And so, like I said, it must have stuck for 32 years. So we're stuck with each other now.
Now, did he continue on in policing?
He did. So he started out, he was hired, he was on with the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. Mm-hmm. They sent him to the academy. He was ex-military. Okay. He served in the Coast Guard, ex-military. And then I got on with Marta. And somebody said, well, he should get on with Marta. I said, oh, no. The secret to a successful marriage is not to work in the same place, for me anyway. And so he never came on with Marta, but he is continuing in law enforcement, and he actually works out in Walton County at the Sheriff's Office. So he has about 3 more years to retirement.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's fun. Who knew? I thought he was just being a really nice guy. I just didn't know that, he was. But it really did help to have someone that was really pulling for you. Right. And so we didn't. I still had this unsupportive boyfriend. So as soon as I graduated, I got my diploma, and the next call was goodbye. And then about a couple of months later, my husband and I started dating, because I wasn't dating while I was in the academy. I said, right. I'm focused. I have to get to the finish line. And I said, I can't date while I'm in the academy. So he waited, and it was worth his time. So, but yeah, so it's
wow.
Anyway, yeah. So but I think God put people in your path to help you when you need it the most. Mm-hmm. And it was so uncharted. It was uncharted waters and uncharted territory for me to go through the police academy, not having a military background and being in a paramilitary environment. Oh mm-hmm. my goodness. So it was culture shock at first, but it worked. And so once I finished the academy, then I had to figure out this job of being a police officer.
So we'll talk to us about that. How was your career with Marta before you became the chief?
Yeah, so it was interesting because I never wanted to be a police officer. I know. Yeah, no, I wanted to be a teacher. Yeah, so I went to college to be a teacher. And my dream was to be a 3rd grade teacher. And that's why I went to college. And I was going to be a 3rd grade teacher no matter what. I got to college, and the college that I went to, they had a really good program they let you do student teaching before you get into the program. Mm-hmm. And that was the best thing they could have ever done, because I would have wasted a lot of time becoming a teacher, and I really didn't like it. And so I went. The kids were great, but when you have to decide on the biggest decision that you have to make each day is whether you're going to have a hamburger or a salad in the cafeteria, I was going crazy, and I needed something different. I knew that was not going to sustain me, because I had this thirst for knowledge and life and doing something different, and being contained, I couldn't do it. So Didn't tell my parents. I came home that summer, took some college classes at the Cab College,
Mhm.
and I just looked online. I said, "Oh, let me see what this." And they had a criminal justice course. I
Mhm.
signed up, and it was the best course. It was just so great. I enjoyed it. We could talk freely. We talked about current events. We could express ourselves. And I went back and changed my major to criminal justice. Now, my parents maybe not so excited about
Yeah.
about that because I had to stay another semester.
Mhm.
But they saw how happy I was, and they was like, okay, you can change it one time, but don't do that again. And so, but I was really happy that they allowed me to change my major. So when I graduated, I said I did my internship at DeKalb County Juvenile Probation, and a friend of mine knew a friend, and they said, "Yeah, we're taking interns." And so I love juvenile probation. It was so great. And I said, I want to be a probation officer. Graduated from college, thinking that I was going to be a probation officer. I had my little internship skills, and I applied, and they said, um, we're looking for men. We're not hiring women. Now,
What?
if they said that today, how many affirmative actions and all kinds of lawsuits, but they
Yeah.
said that there were more young men in the system than women, and girls, and they needed more male role models, which I know was probably true. But to come right out and say because you're a woman, we're not going to hire you,
Yeah, we
and
can't
so
say.
they no, you can't say it, even though it's true. So I didn't sue them because I didn't know any better. But but I said, okay, well, I'll go and do. They said, check back in about a year and maybe we'll hire you. Well, I had bills to pay. And so I just started applying at different jobs. And so I applied at a data entry as a data entry clerk. And so I was at a real crossroads because these kids today, you graduate and you have this big D on your chest. You're like a superhero.
Mhm.
You like, I have a degree, so I'm a superhero. I mean, I know they're gonna hire me. No, no. And if they did hire you, they're not gonna pay you six figures like you think, right? Everybody think they're gonna come out making six
Right.
figures, and that didn't happen. So I went back. I had a part-time job. I said, okay. They asked me to stay on full time. I did that for a year, and in the interim, I took a job as a loss prevention officer, and for a major retail store. And that store, not thinking about being a police. It was just a part-time job. The first month I was there, we arrested, I think 15 people that were involved in a scam. They were stealing from the store to steal VCRs from the store. And
Wow.
I was like the accidental detective. I just kind of stumbled up on it and didn't know what I didn't know, and basically helped solve the case. And then they fired about 10 to 15 other employees for stealing, for eating food and that kind of stuff from the store. Who knew? I mean, I was just kind of like being observant and didn't even know that I was, solving these crimes. And
Okay.
so after that, they came and offered me. They came from headquarters. They offered me a full-time job. They like, "Do you want to work here? Do you want to be the manager of your own store?" And I was like, "No, no, no. This not what I want to do." And they was like, "You really should be a police officer because you have that sixth sense." And I was like, "What's a sixth sense?" And they're like, it's like
Like
you
that.
just know,
Listen.
you just And I was like, what's a sixth sense? It's like you just kind of feel it. It's more than knowing, but you just kind of have a feeling. And I was like, I don't know what the sixth sense is, but I'm not looking for it.
Mm.
And so I said, who knew? I didn't know what it was. So I said, no, I appreciate it. I'm really not interested. I'm still looking for my dream job, whatever that was. I'm still looking for that something. I knew it was out there. And they said, okay. So they gave me $1,000 bonus. They gave me a raise for, catching all of these people and all of that. And so my grandfather, he rode Marta every day. He was a janitor at it. It's now it was a Sears and Roebuck building but yeah, down on North Avenue. So he rode he rode Marta every day. He knew all of the bus drivers on his route, and he said the bus driver said you should apply to Marta. What's a Marta? What I mean, it's a great place to work, and you know what they said back then. They have great benefits.
Mm.
Great benefits, right? Because that was the thing back then. You wanted a job with stability, and you wanted great benefits, and so they said they have really good benefits, and they have a pension. And I was like, wow, And they said if you do 20 years, then you could just, you could retire with no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, okay, well, I'll do that for a while, but I'm not interested in being a police officer. So I went to the interview. They hired me on the spot. And I tell people, I tell people the one thing they don't know is that I never filled out an application before I was hired.
Really?
I
Did you
finished the police academy before Marta knew.
did you have to go through like the psychological testing and the physical agility and all the background check and all that? You didn't have to do anything?
So no. No, Marta was
Wow.
getting ready. Marta was getting ready for
The Olympics?
no, they were getting ready for the Democratic National Convention.
Okay.
And if you, I don't know if you were here, but Jesse Jackson has said he was going to run, and the Marta station ran right underneath the World Congress Center, and it still does. It's just called the Dome Station. So Jesse Jackson was running. They were anticipating a lot of problems for Jesse. Run Jesse run. And it was the first time that they were anticipating a lot of protests, a lot of problems. So Marta had to really staff up for the Democratic National Convention. So I had a degree. Oh my goodness, so I was a shoe in. And so we didn't do physical agilities back then. This is 34 years, almost 34 years ago. So we didn't do physical agilities. We did a polygraph. I don't even know if we did a psychological. We did a polygraph for GPI, and that was pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, the panel interview, the panel said, yes, go forth. And he said, you're hired. And then, we started. And so I had to actually come back after the academy to fill out the physical application because I never filled out one.
Okay.
Because they needed people so badly. So
Wow.
yeah, it was interesting. I tell them, I said, I never filled out an application to work at Marta. And they were like, what? I was like, yeah, well, I did it after the fact. But yeah, so Jesse, so the Democratic convention came, and then of course we were getting ready for the 96 Olympics, which was crazy. 17 days working straight. And so, there's no off days, getting ready for that, in the crowds that we had for the Olympics was crazy. Everybody was taking transit because there was nowhere that you could ride. The streets were blocked, and so everybody took transit. So it was really good. But that's one thing Marta does, that Marta Police do, and Marta as a whole, is that we manage crowds pretty well. We're used to crowds, and so we just really got used to moving people around when you can't drive on the city streets. And so we did that really well, and we got ready for that. We did a couple of Super Bowls, and then of course we just finished the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. And then I said I'm retiring now, kid. No. But it's a good experience, and it's taught me about just special event planning and how to prepare for large crowds like that.
So how was it being the chief of your coworkers?
That was interesting. Yeah. So actually, it started when I started getting promoted, and so you think it's fine because you're thinking, oh, everybody's cool, you have no problems, but it's a little bit different when you become their boss and a boss. And so what I found is that people may not always be as excited for you if it's nothing in it for them. So there was a little bit of jealousy that we had to deal with. It was a surprise because I really didn't think about it like they would be jealous of me. I mean, I'm one of you. But it was a little bit, as I moved up in rank, it was a little bit more obvious. And so I always had a thirst for knowledge, right? So I applied for everything. Once I graduated from the academy and I had decided, so remember, I didn't want to be a police and I was just going to do it to appease my grandfather. And I was going to do it for 2 years. And then I was going to do something else that I really wanted to do. Because I'm sure they probably needed female probation officers then by then, right? So
Right.
I was going to do it for 2 years and go back. So I said, but while I'm here, I'm going to embrace this, police job and learn everything that I need to learn. And I had a really terrible field training officer, really
Yeah.
awful. Just
Yeah, that makes a difference. Yes.
oh my goodness, he was going for the sergeant's exam, going for the sergeant's assessment, and so he sat me in the staff room for 8 hours a day while he studied on duty. So some of the females they understood my plight, and so they would come and get me and say, "Hey, we're gonna take her out," and he was like, "I don't care." And so he would never let me leave the room unless somebody, of course, would come and get me. So I said, okay. And so I had to learn a lot of my own. And so I knew I didn't want anybody else to have to go through that. So I immediately applied for to become a field training officer because I was like, I can help. I want to give back. And so I
Right.
wasn't even, I think I was there 6 months and I was like, I need to go. So they allowed me to go back to training. But I couldn't get the official certificate for another 6 months because you're supposed to be there a year. But I just I knew that I needed to help because they needed help in that area. And so I went back, so went to school for that. And then I thought, okay, well, I mastered this. So let me go I said, let me go apply for criminal investigation school. And it's a 2-week specialized school. Hardly nobody, it's very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't a detective. But I wanted the training. I just wanted the training. I just wanted the knowledge. And they said no. So the major kept turning me down. And he said, no, can't do it. So I was like, no, but, not deterred, not deterred. I just knew I needed to wait my turn. And I was going to continue to put in. So I put in about 3 times for criminal investigations. And so one day I met the chief secretary was out, a lady that went to my church. And this is how God puts people in your path for a reason. So a lady that went to our church, she was filling in for the chief secretary.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went downstairs, and just talking to her. And she's like, hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, nothing much. And she said, are you going to put in for criminal investigation? Do you still want to put in for it? And I was like, yeah, I keep putting in for it, but the major keeps turning me down. And she said, well, the major is out of town. He's on vacation. So if you bring me your paperwork to put in, I will put it on the chief's desk and bypass the major.
Wow.
And I'm sure the chief will sign off on it. And I'm going, are you serious? So she goes, yeah, yeah. So she calls me. She goes, you got your paperwork ready? I said, yeah. So she was whispering and I was whispering. And I was like, why am I whispering? But so I said, okay. And she goes, bring it down right now. Bring it down right now. I brought and that's a lesson, one of the life lessons. And to talk, is always be ready, right?
Ready.
I had my paperwork ready. All I had to do is change the date. So I was ready. I went in and changed the date really quick, ran my paperwork down to her desk. She put it in the chief's box. He signed off on it with a note to say, I think you'll make a fine investigator.
Wow.
What? So I was so over the moon. So it was so exciting. So the class was about 2 months out, and I was very excited about it. But it was a week before time to go, and then I had to remember the major didn't know. He didn't know that I had gotten accepted. So now I had to figure out, how do you tell the major that I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks to a class that he knows that he denied, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
3 times,
How
yeah.
do you tell him? So I said, okay, on Friday afternoon, of course she waited.
First time to leave.
I waited until like 4 o'clock on Friday because otherwise you could call and cancel the class. So I waited till like the academy ended up 4 o'clock. I mean,
They
they left at 4 o'clock. So I waited till 4:30, and I went in his office and I said, "Hey, Major, just want to let you know I'll be gone next week." And he goes, "Wait." I said, "I'll be in training," and he said, "You in training?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, I said, "Yeah, I'm going to the criminal investigations training." And he said, "How? What?" Because he knew he had canceled, but he didn't want me to know that he was the one that was canceling my classes. And so I said, "Oh yeah, didn't training tell you that I'll be going?" And he goes, "No, nobody told me." And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Well, anything you need while before I leave, just let me know, and I'll be happy to come in and do it for you." And he goes, "No, no, that's fine, that's fine." I knew he was so upset, but he didn't tell me because he didn't want me to know that he was the one that had been turning my paperwork down.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had told me, but he didn't tell me. And so I said, okay. So I went to class, went to training. It was a hard class. It really was. It was one of the hardest classes I had. I was like, oh my goodness, what did I sign up for? But it was really interesting. I learned a lot. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, okay, I'll come back. And when they have a detective's opening, I'm going to put in.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have the training, right? So they didn't have a detective's opening, and it's probably, a year went by. So I said, okay, well, I have the training. They can't take that away. I just
Right.
went on. I had gotten promoted to sergeant, and I said, okay, whatever. I'll just keep learning, keep growing. And one day my phone rang, and it was the major, and he said, "Can you be in my office?" And I said, "Yes, sir." So I went to his office, and he said, "We want you to be the supervisor of the detectives unit." Me?
And
In
you
that
weren't
time.
a detective yet?
No, I had never been a detective. I had
Wow.
worked crime suppression, but I had not been a part of the detectives unit. And I said, so the goal I had for myself was to one day be a detective. The goal God had for me put me in charge of all the detectives.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so he didn't say I had to be a detective,
Yeah.
to be a detective supervisor. So I
Mhm.
had the training. Truly, I didn't do the job as a detective, but I was a supervisor, so I wasn't really responsible for doing the work. But I wanted to learn since I was now over detectives, and so that's a good thing. And so yeah, so I was there. I became the detective supervisor, and skipped that step of being a detective. So
Wow.
Wow.
yeah, but because I had the training, if I
Mhm.
had not had the training, I couldn't have gotten that job because he said the question the major asked me. He goes, "You're our probation, aren't you, as a sergeant?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "And you had the 2-week criminal investigations course?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Yeah, when we looked at our list, you were the only one that met those criteria. So you
Wow.
were, yeah, the only one. Now look at God." So I was like, I said, so I could have been one of those like I told you so, but if you strut, you stumble. So I was like, no, I'm gonna be humble.
Kept it
And I
humble.
said, well, I thank you for thinking of me and and trusting me with this new opportunity. But I was thinking in my mind, this is the position you didn't want me to have. And now
Mm.
you coming to me asking me to take on this new assignment. So, those are kind of things you have to be obedient. And I could have been really, um, you know, just upset because I had this training. They never put me in detectives, and I could have been a sore loser. I was like, oh well, they're never going to put me in detectives. But I was just patient, and my time was coming. So
So how far up the ladder did you go before you got promoted to chief?
So another tea that I'm going to spill on this show is that I skipped a rank that I made sergeant. I was promoted to corporal sergeant. I was the internal affairs commander. That's a whole different story. And the detective supervisor, a detective sergeant, and then it was time. Normally in the ranks, of course, it would be a lieutenant. Would be the
Mm-hmm.
next rank.
Right.
And so the chief put out the announcement, time for the assessment for lieutenant and captain. Do you want to apply? I was like, yeah, I'm going to apply for it. And he said, look, if you have a degree, then you can apply for captain and lieutenant. Okay, I'm there. I'll do it. So I applied, came out number 1 and 2, was another sergeant and myself. He was a training sergeant, myself. We came out number 1 and 2, and all of the other lieutenants were there. And the first positions were captain's positions, wasn't the lieutenant's position. So I told my husband, I was like, I don't know if I can go from a sergeant to being a captain. And he goes, why not?
Why
I said,
not?
because it's like skipping the school, right? It's like skipping a grade. And he's
Yeah.
like, no, if your chief had that much faith in you, then, you can do it. And I
Right.
was like, so I had talked myself out of it. And, because, all the, and other people had, in the department was like, you should really be a lieutenant. It's the best job here. You're going to take one of the lieutenant's positions that's been here longer. That's really not fair. So, all these negative naysayers, and I was like, oh, do you want the hassle? And I saw the chief in the hallway because I was actually going to tell him no. And I saw him. He said, hey, have you made up your mind? And I was like, I don't know. He goes, well, what's stopping you? What's stopping you from doing it? And I said, all of the lieutenants are older and they were my lieutenants. So, why would they listen to me? I mean, I'm a sergeant. And he said, well, because I think you can do it, number one, because I wouldn't have opened it up if I didn't think you could. And number two, you can work circles around them. You're smart, you're energetic, you have a lot of knowledge. And so I'm going in a new direction and I want people with degrees, right? And I was like, oh, okay. And none of them really had college degrees. They had just been there, longevity. So he said, I'm trying to change. I'm trying to turn the corner and get a more professional department. I was like, oh, okay. And so he said, and I said, well, what if they don't listen to me? And he said, if they don't listen to you, they'll be fired.
Here you go.
And I said, okay. I said, I'll take it. I said, sign me up. And he allowed me to choose the 2 lieutenants that were going to work for me.
Wow.
And so with a deal like that, I'm like, I'm in. So I never was a lieutenant in our police department. That's a little known history fact. And I don't know if it's a Black history fact, but it's a little known history fact that I never had the rank of lieutenant. So I went from sergeant, skip lieutenant, captain, major, assistant chief, and then became the chief. So I was assistant chief for 7 years under our chief. And then I became the chief, interim chief, and then the chief for 14 years. So, yeah. And so when you move up like that in a department, there are going to be people that are not really happy for you, right? So even though you think that you know people, yeah. And so you have to, you have to just keep moving and you have to treat everybody fairly and do your job the best that you can and not really worry about it. And good, the best thing about it, I didn't really hang out with anybody anyway. So,
right.
There wasn't a lot that, I lost. So I just treated everybody fairly. So, yeah.
And I know this wasn't necessarily, I was thinking about this while you're talking about this, talking about your trek through the ranks. And pardon me, Jacqueline, I have to ask you, how was it, very briefly, how was it working in this environment and family? Because we already know, you've already said you married where you met your husband, and so you all are growing. So you're growing professionally, but you're also growing personally. Surely wanted to expand the family or through strengthening the marriage and so forth and so on. So how did all that factor in? How did all that play a role?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And people, when people find out that my husband's married to a chief, they said he said he would get questions like, what's it like being married to a chief? I was like, I'm not a witch doctor. I'm just a chief. and my husband would answer, and he had such a great answer to that question. And he said, she's the chief at work, but she's my wife when she comes home. And I thought that was really a good answer because he was right. I mean, it wasn't like I was, telling him what to do. We were 50-50 at home, and sometimes it was 70-30 because I had so much to do, right? And so he answered it and with grace, and he said, I'm not standing around. I said, my husband's not standing around holding my purse. He's we have things to do. But yeah, you're right. We made it work. We started a family, and we call it baby swap. So my husband was working 7, so he would get off. He worked at night, overnight, 11 at night to 7 in the morning. I was working 8:30 to 4:30, and so we had these baby duties, and so I would, everybody had their roles, and so I would get off work, and thank goodness I was off on weekends at this time because I think I was a captain, and then I went to headquarters right after the Olympics, and so when I worked at headquarters, so I worked Monday through Friday, so that helped, but I would go pick our son up, as he got older, of course, do homework, but you have to feed them, bathe them, get them ready for the next day, get yourself ready for the next day. My husband would go to work at 11 o'clock, and then he get out at 7 o'clock. I would take the baby to him. We're swapping babies in the parking lot, the police department. My husband was supposed to get off at 7, but if you get that late call, you don't always get off at 7.
You gotta
Right.
do paperwork, yeah.
He worked for a small department at the time, so I would take the baby in, and everybody, dispatchers would watch the baby, officers that wasn't on call would babysit, and then so yeah, so it took a village. It
Does
took
it-
a village,
Yep.
and the village, yeah. So police officers. My husband said he would come in. He came in one time, and our son was probably about 3, and he had some of those super soaker guns, and he said the officers and our son was running them down the hall, shooting at one another with the super soaker water guns at 7 o'clock in the morning. He said, I wasn't sure who was a kid and who was the police, who was the adult. But we had a really good village, and we made it work, right? So it's a lot. It really is a lot, but you have to be committed to making it work. And then my husband would take him to the daycare or school, and then we got to do it all over again.
Wow.
But those are some of the sacrifices that you make.
Yeah.
And you want to raise your kids, and we never missed a PTA. We never missed a parent teacher meeting. Both parents, we thought it was so important for both parents to be there.
Absolutely.
Because in the schools, they only see mothers, right? They're used to
Right.
seeing mothers at
Right.
these meetings. And so
Yeah.
my husband wanted them to make sure that they saw a male, that our son had 2 parents that come
Right.
to these meetings, and we were responsible for. And so we just, if he had to get off and take off or say, I'm coming in late or whatever, but we always had a unified front when we went to, to schools or whatever he did, we always showed up.
Sounds good. But we're gonna fast forward to retirement. After
Yes,
you wrote a book, we need to talk about that book.
I did. So every time that I would go to speak to a group, and it was mostly ladies. Sorry, Eric.
That's
But
that is all right.
but it was mostly ladies, and they lean in circles, and in Fortune 500 companies they have the lean in circles and all of that, and then of course the diversity and inclusion groups. And so every time I would speak to the ladies, and I would tell them stories like this, of things that we had to do, or where the men wouldn't respect you, or the fact that as a sergeant, female sergeant, and I call my male officers at home. This was before pagers, that their wives would hang up on me, or challenge me. Oh yeah, they were like, "Why are you calling my husband?" I was like, I'm their sergeant," and so yeah. So I had to deal with that.
Wow.
The wives would come up and want to meet me and make sure that I was who I said, what the husband said. And so I had to deal with all of that, or the fact that when I was training a new recruit, as the sergeant, as the person that was, as a corporal or the sergeant in charge, they would always go to that male that I recruit. And I'm the person that was training them. So, so those were the things that they were surprised about. And so they was like, you need to write a book, because there's just not enough time for you to tell us all of these things and all of these things that happen. And I was like, yeah, I'm write a book, right? I don't have anything, you know. They was like, yo, no, you really should. You really should write this book. So I kept kind of hearing that drum beat, and it got louder and louder. So in 2020, when I was deciding whether I was going to retire or not, my son had gone back to school, and so he said, well, you know, he got his master's, he's got his MBA, and he graduated in May. And I said, okay, once my son graduates, then, you know, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to retire. And so I did. And then I thought, well, I have time for this book because, you know, when you retire, you want to do all the traveling that you thought in your head that you were going to do.
Yeah.
And of course, retired in the middle of a pandemic in 2020, I
Yeah.
found myself with some time on my hands. So I came up with a book. And everybody has a story to tell.
Yep.
And so I don't think there's anything special about me. I just wanted to tell the story, my story. And because when people say, well, what's so special about how you came up and how you became a chief? You know, it's my story, it's who I
Right.
am. And to understand where I am today, you have to understand how I got there.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
so I wrote a book, and the first book, this is a two-parter. The first part is called Becoming Chief. This is my book, and it's called Becoming Chief. And the reason it's called Becoming Chief is because it takes you from when I was young all the way to the day I was sworn in, you know, to become a chief. And I that's the first part, and then the second part will be being chief, and it'll talk about the 14 years of being a chief. And what's significant about that, as you guys know, is that the average life expectancy of a chief in Georgia and most places is 3 to 5 years.
Mhm.
So to be a chief for 14 years and last,
It's unheard of.
yeah, it is. And so it really is kind of a unicorn-ish move.
Mhm.
But you know, so to talk about those things, and in the second book, you're here about you know, when the NAACP, Concerned Black Clergy, and Rainbow Push came after me for something that my officers did, but I stood by the officers. So and it came out all right. I came away with some friends for life out of that meeting. But you know, they challenged, you know, some of the things that our officers did. And I told them, you know, I stood by the officer. And they said, well, why do you stand by the officer? I said, because I did my own investigation. And they was
Mhm.
like, well, you did, well, yeah, but you could cover up. I said, no, unfortunately, I was 3 months into being a new chief, a Black female, first ever at Marta. I told them I don't have the luxury of being wrong. So
Yeah.
I had to check and
Yeah.
double check, because
That's right.
there's no grace when you are the first, or you're a female, or you're African American. There's no grace. If you messed up, you
You're
could be
out of it.
gone.
You're
You're
gone.
right. So I told him, I said, I don't have that luxury of messing up. So I have to be right. So, so trust me when I tell you that this officer didn't do anything wrong, because if he did and I stood up for him, I would put my career on the line, and I
Yep.
wasn't going to do that. So I wrote the book. It launched on December 30th on Amazon. It's still on Amazon. It has done really well. Had a lot of positive feedback, but it's on Amazon in paperback, and you can do a Kindle ebook. So it's but you know, it was fun to write. I didn't think it would be this fun, but it was my story. The best part about it is I got a chance to sit with my parents and reminisce as we were going through their lives, and they got a big kick out of it. They really did. They really have enjoyed their spotlight, so to speak. And so
Mhm.
their friends have all called them, and so I think they wrote the book. So we won't tell them, but but they really have enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to it. And I have my first book signing this Saturday.
Okay.
And because of the pandemic, it's been a little challenging to get people together. So this Saturday at downtown Decatur at the Courtyard by Marriott, in the
Mhm.
conference center right behind there, from 1 to 3 at 130 Claremont Avenue. We're gonna it's the downtown Decatur, right there by the courthouse.
In
It's
the
the it's
square.
the in the square, right downtown. And we're gonna have the big ballroom for social distancing. So come on out. We're gonna have a station to make sure everybody gets checked for temperature
Mhm.
checks and all of that, and make sure everybody's safe. But we're going to talk about some scenes that were not included in the book, and why. And we're gonna talk about why in the next book, why the NAACP came for me, and
Mhm.
how we all won in that situation. So, but I really have enjoyed writing the book, and so I'm looking forward to the next. I'm starting on the next chapter for the next book now, so it's gonna be fun.
That's good. That's good.
Wow, that's awesome.
I've
I
been
know I
busy.
need to come to you because I'm gonna need some inspiration. Actually, not so much inspiration behind the book, but that the A word, accountability.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Yes, you've got to do it. Yeah, you know, I truly think that everybody has a story.
Right.
And I know your story. I've learned Jacqueline's story, and she
one.
has
Mhm.
an incredible story
She
and
does.
history. And so what she's gone through, I think if one person can benefit from your story, then I
Right,
think they deserve to hear it, and we have to tell it.
right.
And
Right.
so, get inspired, do it. You know.
Mm, wow, my
Yeah.
chief.
Yeah, so it's been fun. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what kind of book I wanted to write, but I knew I didn't want to write a 700-page book like President. I was like, no, I'm not going to write a 700-page book. I'm not going to write a 400-page book like the former first lady. But I wanted to. And this book is a little different because it's small vignettes, and so it's small little short stories
Hmm.
that you can relate to,
Right.
and so it makes one book and it flows, but it's not a long drawn out book. It's about 200 pages, a little under 200 pages, so
Okay.
it's doable, and you can do it in a weekend.
Gotta work. Gotta go. You say you can get the book on Amazon?
Yes, ma'am. Amazon, just type in Becoming Chief or type in my name, Wanda Dunham, and it's still available. It's selling really fast. And if you come to the book signing this weekend, I will have books on site for you to purchase. And it'll be signed by me, the author. I had to get used to that, the author. So,
That's
That's
what I'm
but
talking about.
that's in your area, Derek, isn't it? Close, so you can go out there.
I plan to.
he needs to bring all the firemen from the cab because they love him and they'll follow him anywhere. And so bring all your friends. But it's been a really blessing.
Mhm.
It's been a blessing to be able to have this stage and this moment to tell my story. So I'm blessed.
That's
That's
awesome.
that's awesome. I'm gonna definitely make sure I tell my good friend, Fire Chief Tony Washington,
Yes,
who's the fire
yes.
chief over there in the city of Decatur, in her
Oh
in her
yes.
backyard.
That's right. That's right. I haven't met her yet, but I do need to. That'd be a
Good.
great time to meet her.
I will definitely make sure I tell her to
Please
come on
do.
out and
Please.
support you.
Yes,
'Cause you know that
please do.
something about that woman power. You know how y'all
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, girl power, black girl magic.
There you, that's
You
it.
know how
That's
it
it.
is.
That
All
is
right.
awesome.
Well, thank you guys for having me on. It's been
Well,
such a
so
pleasure.
I really appreciate it, and good luck to the book and the
Thank
books.
Yes.
you.
Uh,
Yes.
and we're definitely going to have you come back because you and I had talked about a story that you want to do. You know,
Yes,
we're going to
yes,
work with that. We're going to have that.
yes.
About
Yeah,
the chief.
absolutely. I look forward to that. There's some
Yeah.
stories that police chiefs need to tell, and I
Mhm.
don't know. I don't know if they've heard our voice on all of this reimagining police departments and community engagement, and
Yeah.
because we've been kind of silent, and you've heard some, but you hadn't really heard the what we really feel about reimagining police and defund the police and all of that. And I think our story needs to be told.
Right. Definitely. We're going to
Absolutely.
out there. Yeah. Yeah. But once again, thank you so very much for joining us. We really enjoyed it. We enjoyed your story. We enjoyed the book. And Eric's going to make sure he's out there Saturday. And you know what? I'm even going to try to come out Saturday.
Thank
Mhm.
I don't want to
you.
even try.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, please do.
Lord's
The-
willing. Let's see what I can do.
okay, okay. The more the merrier. And
Absolutely.
if anybody wants to sign up, sign up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to do our update on the first Saturday. And remember, everyone, everything you heard said was
powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you again. So
Take care, Chief.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Be blessed.
Absolutely. It's great seeing you.